It's estimated that 1 in 5 adults who have had COVID-19 suffer from long COVID, months, even years after being infected. Researchers in New Jersey are testing a treatment that could help those suffering with the often debilitating symptoms. While treatment usually focuses on relieving symptoms, a new study is testing whether omega-3 supplements can help by using a specific omega-3 supplement formulation that's different from products purchased over the counter.
Because we know COVID is an inflammatory process, could fish oil supplements minimize the inflammation, which in turn is possibly causing these long-term symptoms?
Previous studies in Europe and Israel reported some positive results on omega-3s. Right now, the participants in New Jersey are all healthcare workers in the center where that study was done. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say more than 80% of pregnancy-related deaths in the U.S. are preventable. The information came from a report which researched pregnancy-related deaths in 36 states between 2017 to 2019. The leading underlying causes are mental health conditions, excessive bleeding, cardiac conditions, and infection. And more than half of the deaths occurred a week to up to a year after pregnancy. Stay with us. Hutch is going to be back with an update on your Monday evening weather planner.